groupmates, we are going to have an analyzation regarding to the 3 sources presented by the different teachers and their PowerPoint presentation. So, not further ado, let's start the discussion.
What are primary sources? A primary source must have been produced by a contemporary of the event and it narrates. And also, a primary source is a document or physical object which has written or created during the time under study. A primary source provide a first-hand testimony or direct evidence concerning a topic under investigation. They are created by witness or recorders who experience the events or conditions being documented. There are 4 main categories of primary sources, namely the written sources, images, artifacts, and oral testimonies. So, what are written sources? This includes the contemporary letters, eyewitness accounts, official records, political declarations and decrees, administrative texts, and histories and biographs written during the time to be studied. Photographs or images. These are also considered as primary source, for it is a visual representation of a specific moment in time. This can also help us to understand events and moments better by giving us a sense of how they appeared. Artifact. Historical artifacts means object produced or shaped by human efforts. A natural object deliberately selected and used by a human. An object of aesthetic interest, and any human-made objects produced, used, are valued by the historic peoples. According to Museum Director Eileen Gorian, suggests that the artifacts provide us way to history. And also, she said that artifacts are the touchstones that bring memories and meanings to life. Oral. It is the collection and study of historical information about individuals, families, important events, and everyday life using audio tapes, videotapes, and transcription of planned interviews. Why oral testimonies are important? It is important because at times, an interview may serve as the only source of information available about a certain place, event, or person. Oral history helps us know individuals and communities experience the forces of history.
Primary sources are intimately tied to secondary sources, while secondary sources frequently interpret primary sources. These are documents that refer to information that came from somewhere else. Generalizations, analysis, interpretation, and synthesis of primary sources are frequently used in secondary sources. Textbooks, journals, and reference books are examples of secondary sources.
In the second presentation in the Philippine prehistory, here are the following sources I found: artifacts, ecofacts, fossils, and features. But let's identify if these sources are primary sources or secondary sources. Primary sources is a document or physical object which is written or created during the time of study. On the other hand, secondary sources is interprets or analyzes primary sources. Now let's take a look on these pictures. The latex in the Palawan and Cagayan, the ceramics in the Pambansang Museo, and burial jars in Matitom, Sarangani. I consider this example of artifacts as on primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources in a sense that the person took the photo is in there in particular place where the artifact is found. However, it is also an example of secondary sources since it is a photograph and we can only interpret and analyze the elements formed from the images. Same interpretation also in the sources presented by the ecopox, fossils, and pictures.
We have here the written and non-written sources. First, the written sources are those which are in the form of written text. They are used by historians to reconstruct ancient, medieval, and modern history. Some example of written sources that give us information about history are reference books. So we have here the Philippine Journal Science by Otley Beer, the Tabon Caves by Dr. Robert Bradford Fox, Filipino Prehistory by Landa Chocano. Books are included in the written sources, so I can say that it is belong to written sources. Next is the non-written sources. Non-written sources include interviews, films, photos, recordings of music, clothing, buildings or tools from the period. So we have here the reed slip pottery, Tridacna Taclubu shell tools, earthenware pottery, earthenware jar, earthenware goblet, burial jar, and iron tools. Since those are included in the written form, I can say that it is belong to the unwritten sources. And now, the published and non-published. Published occurs on the date on which copies of the work are first made available to the public. And unpublished refers to any information source that is not officially released by an individual, publishing house, or other company. It is not available to the public or for citation, scholarly, or legal context. The following are the published books since it is made available to the public. So we have here the Tabon Caves by Dr. Robert Bradford Fox, Filipino Prehistory by Landa Chocano, Prehistory of Indo-Malaysian Archipelago by Peter Bellwood, Archaeology and Culture in Southeast Asia, Unraveling the Nosanto by William Solim, and the Pre-Hispanic Source Materials by William Henry Scott.
Primary source are materials produced by people or groups directly involved in the event or topic being studied. They are either participants or witnesses. Therefore, examples of primary sources related to visual imagery are the followings. Number 1. Maps. Maps can be useful as primary sources because as they provide insight into a place at a particular time, and they demonstrate how places and the understanding of places can change over time. Maps can also reveal the interesting information about the culture and society in which they were produced. Number 2. Photographs. Photographs present a visual record of a moment in time. Photographs are very useful types of primary sources. They provide a rare glimpse of a particular second in time, which will never again be repeated. People may assume that photographs are unbiased, accurate records of historical events. Photographs also reflect social conditions of historical realities and everyday life. It also gives us visual ideas of places, historical events, as well as people. Number 3. Sketches, drawings, and paintings. Sketches and drawings that may indicate the condition of life of the past, while paintings and the other works are visual representation based in the artist's expression or interpretation of events and ideas. These become useful historical sources when we have to know or understand the context of the period in which they are made. Number 4, and lastly, cartoons. Cartoon for political expression or propaganda also indicates the temper of the time. The secondary source is interprets and analyzes primary sources. These sources are one or more steps removed from the event. Secondary sources may have pictures, quotes, or graphic of primary sources in them. This includes books, journal articles, speeches, reviews, research reports, and more. There are 2 examples of primary sources, which is history books and printed materials like serials, periodicals which interprets previous research.
What is visual source? Photos, paintings, drawings, cartoons, poster film, video, advertisement, video games, and three-dimensional art such as sculpture and architecture can all be interpreted as a part of the documentary record. Visual source. This includes published original accounts, published original works, or published original research. They may contain original research or new information not previously published elsewhere. They have been distinguished from secondary sources, which often cite, comment on, or build upon primary sources. What is oral histories? Oral histories are accounts given by a person of events earlier in their life. Often, they are taken by family members, historians, archivists, or others who interview older people in an attempt to document events and lives that might otherwise be forgotten. Oral histories are valuable.